Hi, my name's Luke Johnston. I'm the Secretary of the Adelaide University Cricket Club. The club was relatively successful on field and off field. We had grown as a club, and the reason we started the strategic planning process was to identify where we wanted to spend our resources, whether that was in further administration, coaching, facilities. We were fortunate that one of our committee members had done this professionally for a number of years and encouraged the club. The other thing that was terrific for us was that Adelaide University Sport were very encouraging. So while at the start not all committee members agreed that we should undergo the process, we had some key figures that were I guess, very supportive. We started with a blank sheet of paper, and we effectively wanted to see what our purpose is. Why are we here as a university cricket club? And I think it came down to two or three areas. We're here as a SACA Premier Cricket Club, trying to assist players to play at the highest level. We're a community club. We have teams in a lower competition, if you like. And thirdly, we're a university club. And I don't think we'd ever sat down as a group and actually identified what we wanted to achieve, and different people had different objectives. So it was a terrific experience just to hear how everyone viewed their part of the club, and hopefully find some common ground. So the first thing we did was set goals, and as I said earlier, everyone had their own goals, and that was good. And I think it was important that we all heard each other's voice and what we wanted the club to look like. And there's no reason that we can't achieve most of those goals. The second part to the process is now that we've defined the goals, is to say, okay, well, how are we going to actually achieve those goals? So to get the organisational structure right, to put resources in areas that maybe once upon a time we've not even considered. It is a two-part process, and the second part is just as exciting as the first. Yeah, there's always a couple of skeptics, I think, in every committee, and that's important. You need people to play devil's advocate. So I think the first challenge was to get everyone on board, to say that the process was a worthwhile one, and it certainly is. So that was the first challenge. The second challenge was, for our committee, was unfortunately just finding the time. We had to set a date many months in advance. We organised an external facilitator, which was for us essential because it showed how serious we were about the process. And then just finding on the day and making sure that everyone turned up for the whole duration. It is, a 3 or 4 hour process, and unfortunately in our committee it's hard to get everyone to commit that sort of amount of time. I guess it's easier to set the goals. The hard part was to prioritise which goals we wanted to achieve first, and in some instances that would come down to financial capacity, some instances it would come down to facilities capacity, but overall the goals for us were realistic. Some people say go high and make really aspirational goals, and that's fine too. But for us, I think we knew roughly what we could afford and what we could achieve, and I think that's the important part of the process, is to check how you're tracking each year, and if you're not achieving certain goals, to find out why and what can be done to hopefully achieve them in the future. I see this document as a living document, and something that we annually review. I see it as a document that we give to new committee members, to new subcommittee members, and potentially incorporate parts of that document in our players' handbook, so it's felt and seen and lived by all the current players, and they know what we're trying to achieve as a committee. So I think while the full document might not be used by all, it's certainly aspects of that document will certainly be used by the playing group as well. the interesting comment that we got from our external facilitator was that a lot of the committee would have subconsciously already thought about many of these things. For me, as the full-time employee of the club, I obviously go to bed thinking about the club and I wake up thinking about the club. So I probably had a good idea of where I saw the club and where I wanted to go. In many respects, this process brought everyone else up to speed, and it has no doubt engaged the committee, and that the committee has taken more responsibility, which is a terrific thing. So getting the process started is the hardest part. It doesn't matter whether you're studying for exams or anything else. Starting's the hardest part. Setting a date. If you can afford an external facilitator, I strongly recommend. Otherwise, even someone from Adelaide University Sport might be able to help. Making sure that one or two people are in charge of the documentation, because otherwise it's easy to have a talk fest, but it's so important to make sure that it does get relayed onto paper, and then continuing the process, which is the organisational structure. I think this process will have a significant impact on how the club's run in the future from an operational point of view. A lot of the process, and probably the hardest part of the process, is actually documenting. It is a plan. It is a lot of words on paper. The easy part's having the talk fest and setting goals and leaving leaving it all up in the air. But the really important part is actually documentation. And for us, we'd been in existence for 109 years. And we'd never actually sat down as a committee to say, well, what are we here for? What's our purpose? What do we want to achieve? And the landscape for cricket has changed so significantly in more recent times. We're not just a premier club, we're a community club, and obviously we have a number of responsibilities for Adelaide Uni Sport also. So for us it was just a necessity. We needed to sit down and take the time to hear everyone's thoughts, everyone's goals. And if we didn't, I guess we would be potentially just doing the same thing as last year and the year before, as the same as the year before that. So for us it was to create change, to be more modern. We actually had to sit down and say, well, what are we actually here for?